So sometimes we say, oh, my father, my mother, or my grandfather, they cannot use the banking app. They are always complaining. And sometimes actually they are right.
AI has been around for a while. There's a number of use cases, but can you talk to me about what responsible AI means to you?
You know that the world already contains lots of biases, right? So one part of responsible AI is to try to not increase those biases even more. And many times in the process of building machine learning models, there's many little decisions that we do along the way, which data to collect, how to handle the data, which data to select, how to train the models, which models to use. So there's lots of little decisions, and many of those decisions can increase bias. What we want in one pillars of responsible AI is to avoid adding more bias to a system that is already biased.
And when you talk about bias, can you give me a real world example? What does bias mean from an AI perspective?
Okay, I can give you a real example from a client that we have. This is a bank that is checking for transaction fraud, and they are blocking older people 60 years old or more, 4 times more than other people. But this is 4 times more false positives. So they have done nothing wrong. They are just being blocked. So sometimes we say, oh, my father, my mother, or my grandfather, they cannot use the banking app. They are always complaining. And sometimes actually they are right. They cannot really use the banking app because the banking app is incorrectly blocking them much more than other people.
Where could this go wrong if we're not careful? We've talked about that banking app, but where could this kind of go in terms of things we should be concerned about?
Many times in real life, without AI, you have many different options, many different bank tellers, for example, many different branches, and you may have more variety. But in AI, as we automate, we get many times a single decision process. And sometimes it's harder to intervene. If the AI does something wrong, how you as a person go and even realize that something was done incorrectly to you. And if you realize, how do you go and complain? So sometimes it's not clear, right? For example, if, say, LinkedIn ad placement is not showing, say, computer science jobs to women, they don't even realize that they are not shown the computer science jobs, right? They don't see them. It's almost impossible for them to realize that they are seeing less ads than male partners. But if they do recognize, whose fault is it? Is it LinkedIn? Is it the company that placed ad with LinkedIn? To who do you complain? It's not even clear. So that's one concern with responsible AI, is to find ways for people to understand what goes wrong. Sometimes it can go wrong, and if it goes, what to do next.